Hello, everybody, and welcome to our biweekly community call. My name is Rachel. I'm your usual host, and I'm here today with Kevin to talk about conferences from both an attendee and a business development perspective. So, Kevin, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. Hey everyone, Kevin Korstorffen. I've been with API3 for a few months now. Been in the crypto space since 2017. Before that, I was in traditional finance for about 10 years. I was an ambassador with a couple crypto projects, and eventually some of the DeFi protocols I was admiring were bigger than some of the institutional lenders that I was working with on the traditional finance side, and finally decided to make the leap over fairly recently.
That's awesome. It's always cool to see people that have come from kind of the traditional version of whatever we're doing now in crypto, and then they kind of transitioned over. So I think that gives interesting insight as well. And so you're also working currently on the business development team, right?
That's right.
Awesome. Yeah. So he's going to be here to talk with us today about conferences and kind of his experience with EthCC, which we'll get deeper into when you kind of start talking. And yeah, we'll start with our current events, kind of recapping stuff that API3 has been up to since the last call. We had some more cool uses come up for the QRNG in NFTs that we retweeted on our Twitter feed, so you can go check that out. I really like seeing QRNG getting used as the free public resource that it is to do some really cool stuff. The quarterly API3 Enterprise Development Report was done by Giovanni. It's for May, June, and July, so you can go read that on the API3 Medium. Uger also put out a really good Twitter thread explaining how to use beacons and some cases for you to use them. So definitely go check that out if you're curious to either learn about them or use them yourself. And like I mentioned earlier, we were at API3. API3 was at EthCC, and we had some pretty cool stuff happen there. So let's get into that because you were at EthCC. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it was just interesting being out there and feeling the energy of the market. It's interesting for me to see a lot of the different projects out there, and I think a highlight was actually seeing Vitalik and hearing him talk. Um, Overall, I thought it was interesting to get the pulse of the market. I think everyone knows your bear market or recession or whatever you want to call it, but overall, I think the overall vibe of the event was everyone was just putting their heads down and building. Um, I think everyone was kind of acknowledging some of the roadblocks, but there was a sense of optimism that everyone kind of knew that we were on the right track and doing a lot of cool stuff. So overall, I thought the vibe of the conference was pretty positive, and it was interesting just to see what everyone was working on.
That's cool to hear because sometimes when the market's down, you'll look at social media channels and think everybody's just doom and gloom and the world is ending. But then you get to these conferences where there's a bunch of really kind of focused people and they're like, hey, this is actually an opportunity where we can build some stuff. We can kind of set stuff up for the next upswing in the market, which will eventually, inevitably happen. So I think that's really cool to hear the sentiment in person from people was like, okay, yeah, the market's down, but hey, we can do stuff. It's not stopping anybody from building, right?
No,
And speaking of
no.
building, we had a really big announcement about our new API3 market at EthCC. So can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, so I guess it's a website where data providers can list their feeds and people can easily just go and choose what they want and build a DAPI and just kind of automates a lot of the process for these guys. And I think they'll still may want to talk to someone like me, but if they wanted to, they could just go to the website and do it all themselves. And I think it puts everything in a way that's really just easy to see and easy to use and grasp for a lot of these developers. So good thing to have there, and especially as we start onboarding more projects and data providers as well.
Yeah, we've got again, it's kind of like a centralized place where you can check out the DAPIs we've got available on Polygon, BNB Chain, Avalanche, and RSK. And for a period, they will be free to use. So anybody that's interested in developing anything with those or using those DAPIs can go test them out for a while and see how they like to use them. So I think that's pretty cool. And you said that you saw a speaker at ECC. Who was that speaker?
Yeah, Vitalik Peter.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay. There we go.
I saw a couple good presenters. Some of the highlights, I think, Civic. They give a great talk. Exactly. They give a good presentation at their event. Who else? A couple other interesting ones. Yeah, but Vitalik was pretty good.
I guess that would be a highlight of most people's kind of like if you're interested in crypto, seeing him's probably talk is probably like, yeah, that was like a highlight for me, right? So
Yeah, no,
and
it was definitely interesting. Yeah.
yeah, awesome. And API3 had a booth there, and we did some stuff there and hosted a party and did some other stuff. So can you talk a little bit about what API3's presence was at ECC?
Sure. Yeah, we had a great booth. I felt like the reception that we got there was overwhelmingly positive. Had a lot of people and projects that I respect come up and just gush about how much they loved API3 and what we're doing. So that was pretty encouraging from that perspective. Made a lot of good contacts there and people looking to build. And I think one of the things I was picking up is that the I think API3's architecture is well suited for the direction that I see DeFi and the space in general moving to. I think for us, the kind of selling point all weekend was, well, what's the difference between first party and third party oracles? And I think at the crux of it, some data feeds don't make sense for third party oracles to list due to logistics or economics. And as the space matures and we get more unique use cases, I think it's going to be harder for those Oracle providers to provide those unique data feeds that are required for some of the more interesting use cases. And so we had a lot of projects coming up to me in the API3 that, hey, can you get us this feed? We're building this. Can you get us this? These other guys won't do it. And I thought just the way that I see the space evolving, it was kind of, I thought it would evolve in that direction, but to see people come up and say, we need this, you guys can do it, it was pretty validating, I think, to be able to add value to projects in that way. So yeah, it's been a busy week being back, just following up with everyone, but it was overwhelmingly positive there at the booth. And yeah, then we hosted an event at this with Claros at this. It was like an abandoned train station kind of event space. It
Yeah, I
was
saw
pretty
pictures.
great.
It looked really cool. I wish I could have
Yeah,
gone. It seemed pretty fun.
that was great. Yeah, the everyone did a great job of putting it on, and that was well attended and met a lot of great people there as well. So overall, I think the whole conference was a great success, and yeah, it was great.
And I think that's something that like I'm kind of happy that, for better or for worse, the situation the world's in right with the COVID and all that other stuff, we're kind of getting back to hosting in-person events, which from a business development perspective, because I actually did that for API3 for a while, it's really impactful to meet people face to face. And I think people remember you and your project a little bit more if you can talk well and make a good impression on people, whether you have you're really good at talking about your project, or you have a cool sticker or something that brings people over, or a shirt or some other interactive thing, or a party or whatever. I think that's kind of a moment for the marketing team to shine. That's a moment for the business development team to shine. And you can meet people that you wouldn't have met really anywhere else, because maybe they don't have an online presence, or they're just brand new and they only go to these conferences and stuff like that, and you meet people
Yeah,
in person. So I think that's
and there were a lot of like really early stage projects as well that came up and said, hey, we have this idea, and also just like providing that feedback to them on what we can do and what we can't do early on in the development process. I think that helped build relationships there, and it was also, I mean, it's just really helpful for them, to kind of make design decisions based on what is actually available and what the implications of those decisions are. So yeah, just getting in front of the right people. I think that's what it's all about. And yeah, no, it's great.
right. And I think that's like, you see the speakers and you see people and you see booths and you see projects and stuff like that. And I think from a kind of business perspective, if you are like a project or a company or whatever, and you're thinking like, is it worth it to go to these conferences? Is it worth it to set up a booth, or to even send representatives or something there? I guess from what you've been saying, that it definitely is, right? If you go and you have a good presence, you're going to meet people and network with people. And this is a very digital kind of space, but there's definitely a real space component to this space as well, that can really benefit your project or your team or whatever's going on, because you might generate ideas in person or make connections in person that you couldn't really get that synergy, online, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer for API3 to attend these. It supercharged, uh, I was far more productive out there than I would have been otherwise, and had a ton of great contacts. I think on the individual level, it's great too. Just to, I mean, if you're a crypto fan, it's really interesting just to go around and see what people are up to. I don't know if a ton of individuals who don't have a totally legitimate reason to be there want to pay the admittance fee. I think it's kind of steep for if you don't have a company paying
Right,
for it.
right,
But you can volunteer, and get in. I think they give you free tickets that way. But as far as business wise, it's invaluable. I think at the heart of it, the people who are actually building legitimate projects and who are actually movers and shakers, there aren't that many. It's still a young, small space, and there just aren't. They're out there. It's definitely legitimate or significant enough to have a successful ecosystem. But I think the decision makers is an even smaller group, and so to get all those people or a big chunk of them in one space, it's really valuable right now at this stage, I think. So
right. And like you said, it's kind of like the building era, right? And I can only speak to, I haven't had the opportunity to go to an in-person crypto conference yet, but I can only speak to the time that I got invited by one of my friends to go to GDC, which is a game developers conference, which was awesome. It's in San Francisco. And I don't know if blockchain gaming has gotten to those conferences yet, because this is a while ago, but I saw a lot of projects that were really cool, and they were really like in their new stages. And, those people came to present what they were, working on, and then make contacts with people that were also at the conference. And again, it's like the admittance fee might be kind of steep, but you're getting into a room with a bunch of people that are all on the same kind of wavelength, right? The people that are going to go to these conferences are going to be the committed ones, right? The people that are
right.
like, I want to do this, I'm serious about this, right? And so if you're a small project, or if you're a big project or company or whatever, it's definitely worth it, I think, to go to any conferences that are around you and just kind of try it out, right?
Yeah. I think if you ever have the opportunity, it's definitely worth it, and it's fascinating, right? Everyone's building just cool, unique things, and bunch of smart people in the room. And yeah, I think if anyone ever has an opportunity to go check them out, I think the developer focused ones are they're more interesting for me, I guess, rather than the community ones. Just to see the kind of new ideas that people are coming out with, and um, I know I find the development and building aspect of things and really interesting. So I don't know. Yeah, it's up to whoever it is, but I definitely Paris was super positive experience.
Yeah, awesome. And it seems you mentioned it a little bit before. You've been kind of involved in the blockchain space for some time. So, um, I'm curious, like, kind of how did you get started with API3? Like, what kind of like brought your interest into that? And I like to kind of do this for any team member who hasn't been on the calls yet, to kind of introduce you to the community. So, can you tell me a little bit about
Okay.
how you got here?
Yeah. Okay. It's a long journey. So back, I guess it hasn't that long, relatively. In 2017, I had an old roommate. He introduced me to the idea of cryptocurrency, and I forget what he said, but basically, it just realized I needed to learn everything I possibly could about it. So I went to Amazon and I bought 8 books, read through them, just wanted to learn everything I possibly could. When I was done with those, I went to CoinMarketCap and I read, over 100 white papers. I didn't understand everything. I didn't understand all the math in it, but I was just fascinated to me at that time how people were using this kind of simple technology and doing such different things. And so it's like, what, I guess, still trying to figure out exactly what it was and what it could be. So at that time, I was just a sponge and trying to pick everything up. And while I was kind of in that period of discovery, I found 2 projects I really liked, and at the time, one was Ethereum and one was Chainlink.
Hmm.
Still a good project today. I wish I could sit here and trash it, but it's they do some good things.
Yeah, I mean, it's all
It was,
kind of a space where we're all figuring out solutions,
uh,
kind of all what am I trying to say? Concurrently figuring out solutions. So it's like, as many solutions as there are is great, because we can look at who did what and maybe we can improve on this, or maybe they did something right and that's a cool thing and we can build on that or something. And I kind of like the cooperative aspect of the space. So it's like, yeah, there's some projects that may be kind of in competition with each other, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad thing, right?
No, I think there's definitely enough room for multiple Oracle solutions even beyond us and them, and there were multiple at Paris as well. Um, so I got excited about the Oracle problem, and that's kind of what got me started on this path. And I was one of the first community ambassadors for Chainlink, and I did that for a few years. And I've also been an ambassador for a couple other projects as well, but that's the one that got me started and just interested in this niche kind of part of the crypto ecosystem. From there, I was doing that and also working, but I continued to just read as many white papers as I could. And then I guess a few years later, I don't even remember when, I read the API3 white paper, and I thought, I remember during my time with Chainlink, there were a couple of issues. I mean, just because the architecture is good at some things, but it wasn't good at others. And I know during my time there, I saw some of the problems, especially with onboarding API providers, that could be done differently, and that were sticking points with how things were done there. Um,
Mm.
and it was like, oh, okay. Anyway, so I read the API3 white paper, and then actually realized that I knew some of the people who wrote it or who were involved with it, not that wrote it. And just seeing the way that they address things, reframing things from the Oracle problem to the data connectivity problem, and really, I mean, especially for onboarding API providers, because I think that's such a huge sticking point. A lot of these API providers, they're tech savvy, but they aren't necessarily blockchain savvy. They don't want to run their own node, their own Chainlink node, or some other more time intensive or technology intensive solutions out there. They don't want to just sell their data to a third party node operator and have them sell it to whoever else. It's against the terms of service. A lot of them just legally, or I mean, maybe they could, but they don't want to.
Yeah. I kind of found that
And
too when I was like talking to people through business development as well. It was like, you have a API that your data is super useful, but they're like a brick and mortar kind of company, and they are not into the crypto space. And they're like, well, how are people even going to use it? How does this work? What do I need to do? And like having a really simple solution to that you can just say, hey, like this just works, right? You don't actually have to really do anything, was something that they were like, oh, cool. Yeah, sure. Let's do it. Right. So I think you've
yeah,
experienced that as well.
oh, definitely. I think it's an underrated friction point. I mean, it's getting these guys comfortable. Everyone's interested. Oh, blockchain, let's get our data there, but the actual logistics of that are challenging for some of these Web2 based, data providers.
Right. Like you said, it's
Um,
new. It's brand new technology. We're still trying to figure it out, right? So,
yeah, and then furthermore, the API providers, if they, let's say they got over the tech, they, if they did sell their data to a third party node operator and that node operator sells it to whoever else, their interests aren't aligned. I mean, this data provider, or some data providers who are providing a huge amount of the data for the crypto space right now, they're not properly compensated for it, in my opinion.
mm,
I mean, if they're just selling it to one node operator and then that's powering, the entirety of DeFi, that data provider may not be as incentivized as those node operators.
mm,
Um, so I guess what I'm getting at is there were logistical things, especially on that end, that I thought could be done better, and I thought API3 offered really interesting ways to get around that, with just simple architectural changes, having the data providers actually making a node that the data providers would be comfortable running, and then having them run it themselves. That's been huge, and I think the numbers show we have over 180 data providers integrated right now, which is, I think, 3 or 4 times more than any other Oracle solution out there. So I think getting that done, has been extremely validating for API3, and it's allowing us to be able to serve some of these more unique use cases and help foster some of these more interesting, projects. And for example, I mean, I was speaking with a project last week, and they said, Kevin, we want to tokenize the crime rate in Seattle. Can you help us do that? Can you help us like find a data provider to do that? And
hmm.
I said, yeah, let's do it. I mean, that's what really interests me is tokenizing kind of more obscure, like data, crypto price feeds, traditional asset feeds, definitely, but also having the ability to foster some of these, kind of quirky or more off the wall things. That's huge, and that's something that we can do really well that other Oracle solutions can't. It's just not
Mm,
logistically or economically feasible. You can't convince a bunch of third-party node operators to that they're going to make a ton of money off of providing that feed and that it's worth their time to do it. But it's very
right.
simple for us. You just have to find it, you can use the new website and put that together. And so I think those unique use cases that are enabled by our architectures, that's really a direction that API3 is heading that I'm super excited about. And it's just by talking to people in Paris, it's I think it's coming. So
Right. And I think that's like something that we've covered in a couple calls and I like to kind of continue to talk about is like this is such a new space and I really like the ability of API3 to kind of foster growth in the space by getting those kind of niche feeds. It's like, okay, who's going to need, somebody might look at some feed, of data like crop growth in Minnesota or something like that for corn or something, let's just say, right? And think, why does that need to be brought onto the blockchain? But somewhere out there, a developer is going to scroll through the APIs, the data that we provide and think of some wild use case for that crop data in Minnesota or something like that, right? And then there's going to
yeah,
be a D app built that uses it and it'll do something. And it's like, well, if we don't have that wealth of data available, how can the space grow with these kind of wild concepts, right? It's like the very beginning of the internet or something like that. Like people thinking of new ways to use the technology and new ways to connect people and do crazy stuff. So I really like that aspect of API3 as well, is that like we kind of provide an ability for more esoteric kind of data and smaller niche stuff to show up on blockchain, and then developers can look at it and think, wow, okay, I wasn't thinking about an app to, predict what color of, something, cakes or something that are ordered in New York or something. But now I can, and we can do something like that with blockchain or whatever, or even, QRNG. We had the people from ANU who provides the machine, the quantum machine that actually runs QRNG, talk about the wild use cases that they found people using the machine for once they put it online, like using it to name their baby or something like that. That they never expected these kinds of things, right? So when you put something out there, people will find it and people will find creative uses for it. And I think that's kind of what you were getting at too, is like, we can allow people to put all that kind of crazy stuff on the blockchain and see where it goes, right? This is the time for
yeah.
building, like you said earlier. So,
Yeah, and it's been just overwhelming the kind of unique things people are trying to get, and I think are just going to get more and more. And I mean, I just think that speaks to our advantage here so much, that the first party versus third party. I mean, I had a different Oracle project come up to our booth, and we were friendly with them, and they asked me, how's it been getting data providers onboarded? And you kind of tell that they were having trouble with it. And I said, that's been the easiest part for us. And partially because I haven't had to do it. I'm just working with projects themselves. So I'm not really working. So it's really very easy for me because I haven't been doing it. But on a more serious level, I mean, we have more than anyone. They like, it's proven out. They like our solution. It's easy enough for data providers to run. I mean, we have more than anyone by a lot, and that's been, I mean, I think it's been a lot easier than for a lot of other projects. And that sort of chicken and the egg thing. I mean, as we keep growing, if you need something other than, crypto data feeds or which we have too, and we can insure, or not insure, risk protect. I shouldn't say insurance, but we can
mm,
offer risk protection on that, which is, I mean, effectively the same thing. But a lot of these guys are getting data feeds, and if it misreports, they're totally lost. And I've spoken
mm,
with multiple projects that have used different Oracle solutions and have been literally wiped out because of a misreporting data feed. And that's something that we want to eliminate as well. And I think when we do get the risk protection online, and it should be September, October, that's going to be massive as well, especially for these kind of singular data sources. And there's another thing. I mean, not every data set is offered by multiple data providers. I mean, it's
Mm.
inappropriate. Like there is, so you can, I mean, you can have a decentralized Oracle network, but they're all pulling from the same data source. So I mean, at best, you're just paying more for different node operators to go to the same source. At worst, you're just, I mean, it's obscure and you don't even know that they're going to the same source. And I mean, I don't know, but basically, I mean, it just doesn't make sense in some cases to use that architecture. Um, so
Yeah. And it's
I don't
like,
know,
you know,
rabbit hole.
the cool thing about like blockchain, one of the really cool things is like it's decentralized. Anybody, it's kind of open source, decentralized. Anybody can build on it. Anybody can think up a solution to a problem that they see and go test it, do it, right? You know, like, okay, is this a problem that we have? You know, how can we figure out a solution to that? And then somebody can build a product that kind of solves that solution, and then somebody else can see it and be like, ah, maybe doing it this way might be a little bit better, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, right? This is kind of the era of just test it and see if it works, right? So it's cool that we're getting some solutions that serve some problems and some solutions that serve other problems. And you know, we kind of got to build from the beginning, right? Like, you know, we kind of started with Bitcoin and then everything went from there, and now we have all this other stuff that you can build on, and you know, different utility and stuff like that. So I think it's really cool, that kind of nature of, and I see a lot of these projects that are okay, yeah, we're doing similar stuff, but that doesn't mean we have to, you know, hate each other and be enemies and super competitive, maybe like it would be in a traditional business sense. It's like, yeah, we can still learn from each other, right? You know, it's not like we can't coexist, you know, in the space, because yeah, it might be a small space, but there is enough room for lots of projects that are kind of trying to tackle similar solutions to exist. So, and I think that's really cool, a cool aspect
Right.
of the
And
blockchain
I think
thing.
it's been kind of finding, you know, where do we fit into all that? And I think it's clear. I mean, we're have way more data providers than anyone. And I think as things go on, that's going to be a massive advantage. I mean, if you look at like, you know, before DeFi, what, you know, what some of these other Oracle providers, was there really any use? And I think some are just limited to that. And as I think the next wave of DeFi, when you're tokenizing a lot more interesting off-chain sorts of things that are unique, and I, I just see it playing to our advantage. So yeah, super
Yeah.
excited about what the future holds, and seeing where things go.
And that's, I bet a lot of what you told people when you were in person at the conference too, being the BD guy, right? Is like, hey, you know, you've got a problem, we've got a solution. Go ahead and try it, right? So see
Yeah,
how you like it, right?
yeah, and you know, a lot of times just working with them, all this, a lot of these problems are new problems, and so just kind of, yeah, working with the project and like, okay, here it is. How do we find a way around it? And yeah, we have to get pretty creative sometimes, but yeah, it's just been super productive so far and overwhelmingly positive. People read
Awesome.
the white paper and they love it. I mean, we had some like, I don't want to, you know, name drop them, but just some really, I mean, projects that I admire a lot just come over and gush about API 3. We love what you guys are doing, blah 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 blah. Yeah, I think the community is seeing what we're doing, and it's good to see that recognition out there.
Yeah, and especially
Definitely.
like in the in-person sense of like, oh hey, there's this, you know, name that I've seen online so many times, right? And now they're a real person standing in front of me, and I'm working with this project, and I say, and they come up to me and talk about my project in a positive light. That's really cool. And that might happen to the other developers. I mean, I'm sure that happens to the other developers that come to these conferences where, you know, even if you're a brand new kind of project and your online presence might not be so big or something like that, and you go to a conference and you have your little booth there, I'm sure you're going to get people that come up to you and say, hey, I've seen what you've been doing and I'm really interested and I'm really excited and I read your white paper. And, you know, that might kind of open up a new kind of source of motivation, you know, passion to continue working on that project that you're like, I don't know if people are really paying attention or if they like it or whatever. And then you go in person and you meet people and talk to them and they're like, wait, this is actually really cool. Like, you know, awesome. Good thing you're working on it. Right. So I think that's kind
Yeah.
of one of the things that's a benefit of conferences, going and being able to, on your side, on the BD side, kind of talk to people and get partnerships going and kind of get the API3 name connected to a face that, you know, somebody's talked to is really cool. And seeing other people that are kind of working on maybe similar projects or have used similar projects come over and talk about stuff they liked or didn't like is really cool. And then, you know, seeing speakers and kind of going in person. So, I mean, that's one of the goals of this call that I had was like, hey, you know, if you're out there in the community and you haven't been to a conference and you're like, maybe it's not worth it for me to pay the money and go, I think it's worth it to pay the money and go, right? If you have an opportunity to go to a conference that's close to you, then go do it, right? Go check it out. Go see the like-minded people, go see the new projects that are happening and stuff like that, and just kind of go see. You'll get some fun merch out of it, I'm sure. People give away stuff. And what was the most interesting piece of merch that you saw? Like, you don't have to say the
Oh
company
my gosh.
name, but what was the most
No,
interesting piece of merch you saw?
I got a whole new wardrobe out there.
Shirts.
I'd
Shirts
say
then.
that, yeah, I got shirts, I got a couple hats. The API, so what we were offering at the booth was straws. So we were offering
Ah.
these metal straws, which a lot of people couldn't figure out what they were at first, but the ones who did figure it out, they liked them a lot. What else? What was the merch?
It's just fun stuff like that, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of, I mean, it's kind of funny because like everyone just wears the shirts that they get on the first day, and
Yeah,
it's
why not? If they look cool and
yeah.
it's free shirt, everybody likes free shirts,
Yeah. No,
Everybody likes free
I'm
shirts.
set up. I couldn't fit them all in my suitcase on the way back. So yeah,
Had to just
a lot of good
wear
t-shirts.
3 of them on the plane, stacked on top
Yeah.
of each other, if they don't fit in your suitcase, right?
Yep. Yeah, pretty much.
So, speaking of community and engaging with community, we had 2 community questions that I thought were cool. And one of them was, does AirNode run on AWS Lambda? So that's kind of a tech
Yeah.
question, but can you answer that?
Yep. It
It
does.
does.
Yeah.
All right.
I believe
Simple
so.
answer. To
Yeah.
whoever asked that question, the answer is yes. And then the other one is, can you explain the actual revenue model mechanism, not tokenomics, but rather cost per transaction? Basically, how's a client charged to use the services offered in the marketplace?
Right. So with the products that we're pushing right now, it's basically the crypto price feeds and also the traditional asset feeds. For the more so for those we're doing a subscription model, and people sign up for a determined amount of time. They pay X amount per month, and that's how we're doing it. Different chains have different costs, and that's we pretty much just have to factor in our gas cost on those, and that's why the difference is there. Right now, the data feeds are live on Polygon, AVAX, BNB, and Rootstock. We should be getting a couple more chains that'll allow data feeds in the next couple months. We have request response live on about 13 other chains as well, and the monetization for those is a little bit more customized. We have to run volatility analyses and sort of figure that out as each one goes. But for the main products that we're pushing right now, it's a subscription based model, and that will so we're giving everything away for free for the next couple months until we finalize the risk protection language. When people are paying for it, we want them to be able to get the whole product, and that includes that. So yeah, basically we're pushing a subscription model, and that's pretty sort of, yeah.
So big stuff coming up eventually. I mean, there's we're always working at stuff or working on stuff at API3, constantly trying to kind of improve the services that we can offer and kind of continue to expand growth in the space, as has kind of been our goal the entire time. So I think that's pretty much about it. Let me check Twitter for 1 second and see if anybody's asked questions on the feed. I do not see any right as of now, and I do not see any on the YouTube comments. So I guess the questions that were submitted prior are going to be our only community questions for today. So thank you, Kevin, for coming on the call. I think this was really cool to hear about your experience at conferences and kind of your experiences in the crypto space as a whole, and just kind of get talking about everything that we've been doing recently, especially like at the conferences. So thank you very much for coming on the call today.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Yeah, our next call should be uploaded to, or this call will be recorded and uploaded to Twitter and also to YouTube. So if you are watching this and you did not watch it live, then thank you for watching. And if you did watch it live, also thank you for watching. And we will see you in about 2 weeks.
Cool.